Welcome back to the Interview 24. We continue a series of talks dedicated to the privatization reforms of the state assets. And today's edition will focus on companies which are operating to improve the investment attractiveness. And today's guest is Akrom Mуҳамматқулов, the acting chairman of the board, UzAssets investment company. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Akram, please tell us, what is the purpose behind starting this UzAssets?
The main purpose of creating the UzAssets investment company is to support state assets management agency in undertaking the expected large-scale privatization program. And the idea is that because this task is quite big, SAMA created UzAssets to accumulate the necessary expertise in preparing the state companies, state enterprises for the private market, for investors, because there are a lot of internal steps to be taken before an enterprise is changing hands. So before
Can you
an
give
investor,
some examples of these steps?
So if you look at Decree 6096, we have in the third list we have 62 companies, and in the fourth list we have 479 companies we have, which and some of them are joint stock companies, some of them are unitary enterprises, some of them are limited liability companies, and the form of their sale might differ depending on the size of the company. So if it's a big, large economic enterprise, it might take longer for selling because some of them have quite a few workers as well. So we need to take a strategic decision so that this company grows after investor takes over. So we will have to think about after sale processes, what will happen with the company, and that will also affect the decision making. So we're not just looking at maximizing value, we're looking at scaling and growth of the company once it moves to private hands. Our ultimate objective is to reduce the role of government in the economy. As the president also announced several times, we need to grow, strengthen our market economy when we have 55% of GDP still through state-owned enterprises, which we need to make more effective, more productive. We need to make them more competitive. Whenever we put an enterprise up for sale, we have to first attract financial advisor who is skilled, who already closed several deals has international experience in preparing, in pre-sale, preparation of these companies. So we attract a financial advisor who advises us on how to structure the deal, how to best market this or that asset or enterprise, how to create the right data room which has vendor due diligence in it, legal, tax, financial, and advises us on how to best market in terms of organizing roadshows, negotiations with investors. So we have a financial advisor. Then we hire professional participants of the market that make audit of these companies, independent audit. And then once we have all of it in hand, we can then call upon investors to make bids, to make their proposals. We present the data and we start negotiating on the price and structure of the deal.
State shares of 6 enterprises were transferred to the UzAssets. So have you already received some kind of proposals, or have you taken any steps to closing these deals?
That is most interesting for investors right now is Kızılkum. We've already conducted several negotiations and also we presented Kızılkum, but more in a kind of broad terms. We haven't yet looked at the deal. We're not really looking yet at the moment, but we're already marketing this asset. It's quite interesting for investors. Now, what's important to know is this process is not that quick, especially if we're talking about some of the big enterprises which have a serious standing in terms of their economic activity and value as well. So we have to take necessary steps, before the deal is closed, and it can take up to 6, 9 to 12 months.
So in your professional opinion, what are the expectations of the local and foreign investors on a recently adopted privatization document?
Well, it's a good question. The president, the government announced this expected, I would say, large-scale privatization program right now, short to medium term. So the market is now expecting us, the government, SAMA, and also UzAssets, to act upon this program and put up for sale quite a lot of companies. We always get asked, we don't have this data or that data. So we need to also kind of teach our counterparts, the management of these big companies, that they need to be more open, that all data has to be published, that data has to be audited, preferably by international auditors, that we need to come forward and start talking to investors, because when investors talk to us, they kind of pinpoint the things that they want to see more or shed more light upon, and then we prepare better materials. Then it's easier to negotiate and come to a deal, basically.
Speaking of the transparency, I would like to ask, how can we observe this process? The public, the journalists, how can we be sure that it's open and transparent?
The best, there are laws that regulate functioning of joint stock companies. Joint stock companies, they have to be open in terms of their data. They need to publish on their websites all the data they have in a transparent way. And you also saw that from 1st of January, we'll have international finance reporting mechanism in place for most of these for all, I think, joint stock companies. That they need to transfer on top of the government reporting finance mechanism and the bookkeeping, etc. We also have the IFRS, which means that we already moved to a certain standard of reporting that investors would like us to see, that's more sort of an international standard. So when these companies, they prepare their data, they have to transform of how they collect data and how they organize data and how they present data, which also has to be public. Basically.
You mentioned the advisors who are going to take the deal to the next level. So which foreign consultants of international companies are being involved in these processes? Or will the UzAssets do it itself?
Maybe down the road, maybe in 3, 4, 5 years, because we're looking at ourselves as a selling company first and foremost for our primary shareholder, which is SAMA. So we will be a selling company in foreseeable future. To do that, to get to that level, and to get to the level of some of our, let's say, big examples like Temasek, for instance, we need to gain experience. We need to manage properly these assets, maximize their value, and then also close the deals to the extent that the government is satisfied with how this or that enterprise was sold. To do that, and we need to attract professionals, global names, I mean, who know how the mergers and acquisitions market works, and this is normal practice to attract. They will look at fixed fee or they will look at success fee, depending on the size of the asset. But we will learn from them, and it's good to have another party on the table which will advise us on strategies for sale, which will advise us in negotiation process. We admit that we're probably not there yet, but our intention is to get there. And when we see how this is done, when we learn, when our staff gets better experience, probably we can at some point probably be closing deals on our own. So that's basically our intention, is to learn by doing, to deliver, obviously, because there is an expectation. But the best practice is to do it with third parties.
Is there any local companies like UzAssets operating in this sphere?
Asset management companies? I'm sure there are asset management companies, private portfolio companies.
But you are the one who are working on the state assets, right?
Indeed. So the government has transferred assets of shares of 6 assets to us,
Yep.
And the primary objective, our primary objective, is to sell the shares of these companies to private sector, to investors, local and international. And we expect that next year, once we show that it's working to the plan, the government will transfer more assets to us and will gain even more experience. Once more companies are sold to the market, more of these economic enterprises, we do expect that our intermediaries will attract big kind of asset management companies to Uzbekistan as well, who will probably enter the market in a more private capacity, and also they will try to participate in our capital market in terms of buying shares and selling shares, etc. So this one of our objectives is, of course, also to boost our capital markets, because when you make the company more open, they publicly offer their shares, and then not just asset management and investors, but the greater public can also participate in this process when the companies are publicly traded, which is the international practice.
What are the plans of the UzAssets regarding improving corporate governance of the state-owned enterprises?
This is actually an excellent question. As I said, once the asset is transferred to us and we're looking at attracting investors, that's part of our work, but we also need to look at corporate governance. If you look at how foreign large enterprises function, there is always at the level of supervisory boards, there are independent directors, and that's a normal practice. So we would like to get there, and according to the decree 6096, you saw the presidential decree, up to 30% of state-owned companies, they will need to attract 30% independent directors. And also in the management, they are also tasked with bringing in foreign specialists. And the whole idea of this is to start opening up these companies, to start engaging with the market better, to make a certain expectation that this company is managed by understandable international standards, which will raise the value of this company, which will make it open, which will improve its management capacity, its production capacity, its selling of its product, export, import, everything. With that in mind, indeed, we're already negotiating with some of our specialists to attract them to the boards, and you will see in coming months that we'll be introducing independent members of supervisory boards in our companies.
Mr. Akram, thank you for having the time to answer to all of our questions. We wish you all the best in your current and future goals.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Today we had Akrom Muhammatqulov, acting chairman of the board of the UzAssets investment company. Stay tuned to stay informed. Goodbye.